What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Crush Live Call-Ins. I am your host here, Bart Hanson. It is 4:45 p.m. Pacific time on a Monday, and that is when we do this show every single week. I can see people are already in the live chat asking about how they call in. If you want to submit for a hand to be called in on this show, there is instructions in the description, but you can email me, bart@crushlivepoker.com, bart@crushlivepoker.com to pre-submit your hand, because I actually get quite a few hands. Usually at least, I'd say like last week I got maybe 15 hands that were emailed to me, and I try to pick the best ones that have the most depth, or, try to display some sort of concept that might not be too complicated to go over on a call-in show. If you're a CLP subscriber, you can also hit me up on Discord. And basically, I take all the hands, and like on Friday or Saturday, I read them, and then I respond over the weekend. So if, like, I saw a couple people email me right before the show today. I can't take hands on the Monday because I already have everything scheduled, but those emails that I got today, I will read them and I'll get back to those people. And I always write back. I'll get back to those people on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday of this upcoming week to try to get on the show. But here I am. I am not at Rob Farha's house. I am at my new place in the Summerlin area. I have this place for a 4-month lease, and then from at that time, my wife and I are going to figure out what we're doing. We don't know if we're going to stay in Nevada, in Las Vegas. We might go to Austin, Texas. We might go to Kansas City. We might go to Scottsdale. We do know that we're not going back to California, and we just up and left. I mean, if you listen to the podcast last week, the CLP podcast, I explained why it was a tax thing, actually. California has graduated taxes, like the federal government, and I made a lot of money this year with my monster stack having 100% of myself. So I'm basically in the top tax bracket for California, which means every dollar I earn now is taxed at 13% if I were to continue to be a California resident. And we were going to move anyways, right? Like, we didn't want to be where we were. We were probably going to move like in February or March of next year. And I'm like, holy shit, if I just leave now for a non-tax state, I'm going to save 13% of all the income that I make in September, October, November, December. It's a shit ton of money. So we up and we left. Still in my place in LA. We haven't closed that out, but we're going to be going back maybe sometime next week and dealing with that. But yeah, I'm in the Summerlin area. Already put a session in at the Red Rock and put it up over in my 5-5 challenge as well, over on the website. Did pretty well. Won myself $1,800. It was a pretty good game. But here's a guy from the Texas area. Well, he says he's from Arlington, Texas, where the Texas Rangers are from. 817, you are first. You pre-submitted. What's going on? Do you actually live in Texas?
I do. I live in East Fort Worth. It's about 5 miles west of the Cowboy Stadium.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'll be in Austin on October 22nd through the 25th. I already had some nice people email me, guy from San Antonio, some people in Austin. I do want to check out the poker scene a little bit.
Yeah.
I hear various things. I mean, there's a couple guys on the CLP forums that are from Texas. One guy, Uno Mas, Peter. And but then there are some people that say, you can't depend on Texas for having poker. It's not technically legal. They're going to crack down. But then other people say, no, like, even with the raid that happened like last month, it was bullshit or something like that. What's your take?
Well, I can tell you that it seems that the authorities have different opinions of it in different parts of Texas. So
okay,
they tried something similar in Dallas about 2 years ago, the whole rent-a-seat approach, which seems to be working well in Houston and San Antonio and Austin. Mm-hmm. And they weren't having any of that. They just went and cracked down on it. So
so they have no rooms they have no rooms in the Dallas area besides like home games or whatever.
Right. It's all kind of underground.
Okay. Oh, I did not know that. Okay. Whereas in Houston and San Antonio and Austin, it's more like you pay a fee. It's not a rake. You just pay a fee and go in, basically. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Right, as I understand it. So for DFW people, we're just if you're in Dallas, you're about an hour from Choctaw.
Right.
Yeah,
just shoot up
or Windstar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been to both those places. All right, man. You got a hand for us here?
I do. This is actually from one of the home games around here in Fort Worth.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's 1-3, and it's I'm 1K effective with the villain.
Okay. It's pretty deep for a 1-3 game, right?
It
1K.
is. It was
Yeah.
an unusual game, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm an MP1 with ace-4 of spades,
Okay.
and I open to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then gets to the hijack. He ends up folding up, but he calls the 15.
Okay, so you open to 15, hijack calls. Okay.
Hijack calls,
Yeah.
and then the villain in the cutoff.
Uh-huh.
He and I have pretty similar stacks. He re-raises to 45.
Okay, so it's kind of a smallish raise, right? Like only 3x with a
Right,
call in between. Okay. Gets folded back around to you?
right. And so I just thought I don't really want to call here. It doesn't seem profitable, and be calling out of position, and I'll be out in position 2 people. We are 1K effective. I thought maybe this is better as a 4-bet.
Okay, so you
So
4-bet?
yeah, I 4-bet to 145.
Okay, let's just talk about that really quick. I mean, so when you look at, and there's a bunch of people that, all these guys that have called in here. I put you guys all on mute if you guys are first time callers, but we'll go in order. Let's just talk about pre-flop. Obviously, we talk about, well, yeah, like you're in a positional. It's very difficult to call when there's somebody basically to your left, right? Multi-way, because it's very hard to realize, right? Like in this case, you've got this guy who has called in the hijack, right? And if you call, he's definitely going to call too, right? So you are incentivized to 4-bet some hands. Like it's interesting when you look at these pre-flop sort of solutions, and I'm not saying that people play like this, but it's just interesting to note that, especially at this stack depth, if you had like kings or queens and you were heads up, this is a flat a lot of the time. I bet like kings at this stack depth from out of position if you were heads up here, especially if you had opened from more early position and the button had 3-bet you. I bet you kings is only like 4-bet like 50-50. And queens is probably called most of the time. Now when you add somebody in between, the frequency goes up like a ton, right? Like if you have kings and queens,
Okay.
you're 4-betting for sure if somebody's in between. So that's just a little something here. So you want to have some 4-bet bluffs. People at 1-3, I mean, probably not going to be that experienced playing a 4-bet pot. I don't know how many 4-bet pots you've played with stack depth. I mean, even me, I don't play in that many 4-bet pots. Ace-4 suited is interesting because it's actually one of the better suited aces, I would say. Like Ace-4, Ace-5, and Ace-9 are kind of the best ones. So I think it's too weak to just fold even with a guy in there. You're definitely continuing. And the question here is it better as a 4-bet? Is it better as a call? I think it would probably be a partial. Like you could fold like Ace-6, Ace-7, Ace-8 suited, Ace-2 suited. You know what I mean? Things like that. So I have no problem with the 4-bet. So you 4-bet to 145, okay?
And part of the reason was I thought that some of the time I could get an immediate fold because I just thought I read the 45 is not super strong.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, yeah, because if he was going to make it 3x plus the limper, it should be like, 75, right? I mean, that's one of the things you can pick up on too, even if, I've talked about this in my podcast, even if you aren't super experienced playing like multi-bet. What I mean by that is 3-bet, 4-bet pots at the lower levels. Sometimes it's just free money when you can just pick up on sizings. Like if, I talk about it like in my 5-5 challenge. If it goes like limp and the button makes it like 15 in a 5-5 game over 3 limpers, that's never a real hand. You can 3-bet. And here it's sort of the same thing. This isn't really a normal sizing. So I can get on board with you 4-betting here more than calling. So you 4-bet to 145. I'm assuming the hijack folds in between. Is that right?
Hijack folds, villain calls.
Okay. So hijack folds and cutoff calls, right? So you're out of position and the pot's like what, 300-ish, something like that?
Yeah, right? It's about 300 with some rake taken out.
Okay, yep.
Okay, flop. So yeah, I felt good about the 4-bet in the moment. I thought it was better than a call, but then I, of course, as you already pointed out, I'm rarely in this spot, so I didn't really have a plan, and I immediately felt lost. The flop is Jack of Diamonds, Deuce of Clubs, 7 of Clubs.
Sorry, guys, I didn't realize I didn't have the graphics up. So it's Jack of Diamonds. What was it again? Jack of Diamonds, Deuce of Clubs, 7 of Clubs.
7 of Clubs.
Okay, so you just whiff here, right? With these 4 spades.
Yeah, I whiff.
Right. And this is part of the reason why you structure your I've talked about this too. Part of the reason why you structure with suited hands, and why you want to 3-bet and 4-bet your suited hands with stack depth more than your off-suited, so you can construct post-flop. It's like a pretty big argument that I get into with people that the newer stuff says, no, you're supposed to 3-bet your suited hands, not your off-suited hands, unless you're short. So Jack 2-7, I mean, this is kind of interesting here because this might be, I'm not the best at this stuff, Christian, like from the top, over the top of my head of like what would a quote unquote solver do in a spot like this, but you could probably bet 1/3 with your entire range. I don't hate checking either. You have nothing going on here. I think you can check fold here sometimes too. And I don't really know how people respond to the small bet. Like you could probably like c-bet like maybe 40 to 50% of the pot and probably show an immediate profit. My issue with betting super small is how people react and how, the small bet is supposed to get people to overfold, to not defend enough. And I just don't think that that really goes on that much in live poker. You will sometimes get a bluff response, which is not necessarily what you want to have happen because you don't always have a hand. You know what I'm saying? So like if you bet like 1/3 and a guy bluffs you, whereas you could bet 40 or 45% of the pot and the guy folds, it's interesting. So what did you do here?
Well, let me ask you this. What my plan was to, if I got at least one spade, then I was feeling
Right.
going to feel comfortable. And maybe some high spades I wouldn't have bet, but like
Right.
Jack, Deuce. Say if it was a 7 of spades, does that seem like the more likely? You feel
Yeah,
more
I mean,
comfortable
I
to
think you
c-bet
can.
then?
Yeah, I think you can start with the back door here. You know what I'm saying? Then this is where
Okay.
like you structure, right? Like you start
Right.
with you have ace 4 spades, right? So unless the board comes out monotone, you're gonna have at least a backdoor flush draw, right? Like 50% of the time, at
Right.
least, right?
Okay.
If it's a rainbow board, you're gonna have a backdoor flush draw, 75% of the time, right? But here you don't
Okay.
have it, so you don't always have to see
Yeah.
bet. So did you check?
Okay. I check and
Mm-hmm.
Dylan checks back.
Okay. Turn.
So now the turn is the 3 of spades.
Okay, so you pick up a wheel draw now, right? Pot's 600.
I pick up
Pot's like
I
600.
pick up a wheel draw.
Yeah.
Pot's still 300 because we didn't bet.
Oh, excuse me. Pot's like 300. I'm sorry. You have like, whatever, like 850 left, right? So you're dealing with about 2 or 3 pot size bets. So it goes check here. I could see this going either way. Like you could probably bet, but then you're gonna have to go bet here. Or crazy enough, I think you can actually check call here sometimes too. You know what I mean? Or it's going to go check here too. I mean, check here, check call with ace high and a wheel draw. And, I don't think a lot of the better ace highs are necessarily bluffing you here. So he's going to either have you beat or you have the best hand here with ace 4. So as crazy as it sounds, I don't hate a check here again. But if I were to probably take a bet here, then it's probably going to have to go bet, especially if there's some sort of overcards that might like run across on the jack or something like that. So pot's about 300. What did you do here?
Well, my thought process, I want to hear what you think about.
Yeah.
I thought when he checks back, I just felt like he's got a ton of ace king, and I need to get ace king to fold, and people overfold ace king.
Okay.
Like if I had ace king in his spot, I would not fold to a bet on the turn. But a lot of people, they place ace king cagely, and if they don't hit the board, then they just fold it.
You think You think that he would just fold now on the turn with ace king? I mean, I guess so. I mean, you're the 4-better, so yeah.
I think it's a possibility. I think people overfold. I think typical people in my game will overfold ace king there.
So it sounds like you bet here, right? Is that right?
I did, but I think I probably bet too small. I bet 100.
And villain calls. Is that right?
Villain calls.
I mean, this is again one of these spots where it's like, what are you betting here? Like 100 on the turn now. What is 100 accomplishing? So it is a bluff. Is that what you're saying? You're trying to bluff ace king off the hand, right? Is that right? Basically.
Right. I'm only targeting ace king. I don't expect him to fold any pairs.
Right.
Any
listen, like if you take this sizing on the turn and you think ace king's going to call because it's so small, you have to follow up on the river, right? And this is sort of where you get into a dance of like, do you want to play this as a two street, or do you just want to bet more like standard, like on turn, like 150 to 175, and then give up if he
Right, right.
calls? You know what
Okay,
I'm saying?
okay,
Give up if he
okay.
calls
Yeah,
unless you improve. So you bet 100 and he calls. So now the pot's 500, right?
correct.
Okay. Yep.
King of Hearts on the river.
King of Hearts on the river. Wow, this is interesting because you sort of loaded the hand up for us a little bit. Your name's Christian, right? Is that right? Am I saying that?
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of loaded this up like I didn't have this information, what you just said, what you were thinking the guy was saying. Because when I read this, when you sent it in by email, I was like, I think you have to bluff here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to bluff here at the end. Now, you seem to have it in
Right.
your head that the guy has ace king, but what if he has like eights or nines or tens or something like that? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, you have an ace in your hand, right? So,
Yeah, I
King,
didn't think about that.
King of Hearts is out there. So, there are three more aces and three more kings, right? So there's 9 total combos of ace king that he could have, with the one king being out there and you having one ace in your hand. Eights, nines, tens. There are 6 combos of each one of those hands, right? Eights, nines, and tens. There's like 18. And then possibly something else. I don't, or maybe like even ace queen suited or some shit like that. Like,
Yeah.
I think that I bluff here. I mean, it
Okay.
sounds to me like you might have had it stuck in your head that this guy has ace king, and now on the river you're like, fuck, like you just ran into ace king. But I think with the pot being like 500, I'd probably bet maybe like, I don't think you need to polarize per se, but I might bet like a half to maybe like
That's
300, something like that, you know?
Okay, I was thinking like 275, something like that. Yeah, that like I've thought of this hand a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think my logic was inconsistent because I'm trying to get ace king to fold on the turn,
Mm-hmm,
and then
mm-hmm.
thinking that I'll get a lot of folds on the turn, and then
Right.
you're right, I just sort of had ace king clouding my head. So then when the king came on the river, I'm like, oh, that's his ace king, but it doesn't really make sense. So
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, I checked, and he checked back, and he had queens.
He had queens.
So
Okay,
he had
that's
queens.
interesting.
So I think, yeah,
I mean,
I
I don't
think I think
know. I don't know if Queens is gonna fold necessarily at the end, but I think Queens probably actually. I mean, obviously he's much stronger than we thought when he checks back the flop, but it
right,
sort of kind of fits into that category of, oh, okay, he could have a pair here too. Um,
right.
it would have been interesting though, right? Because like you go bet, and you probably don't see many four bets like in your game, right? So
Sure,
this guy's
you're
got to
right.
think you're gonna have ace king here, like a fair amount too.
Yeah.
Now the question is that at that point, like, well, do people bet ace king for value at the end? Like, do they play ace king this way? And then you get into this situation where guys will call you just because they don't see anybody in the player pool bet one pair like this. So they're just like, oh, I'm just going to call. He must be bluffing. And you can use that to your advantage, obviously, by thinly value betting against people. But that's a nice little hand. I appreciate the call.
Thanks for the time.
That was Christian. Next one, we are going to go to, I believe is this Shay in the 850? Shay, is this you?
Yes.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
You got a hand for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I got a hand from the Beau Rivage in Biloxi.
A place that I have never been to. I wonder if I'm ever going to
It's
get
really
there.
good. It's really good getting a chance to go.
Yeah, in Biloxi,
It's
Biloxi,
2-5.
Mississippi. What's that?
Yeah. It's 2-5.
Okay.
There are 2 limps in early position on the gun +1 with limp.
Uh-huh.
I have pocket aces in the cutoff. It folds to me.
Yep.
I make it 40. This game is definitely out of the muck for sure. A lot of hands being played, especially pre-flop.
How deep are you guys, by the way? Effective stacks?
What was that? What was that?
How deep are the effective stacks?
So I have 2,400. I have everyone covered. And this actually goes 5 ways. The button calls, big blind calls, and both limpers call.
So the button calls, big blind calls, and the limpers call. So you're 5 ways, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the flop comes deuce, deuce, 6.
So-
Deuce of diamonds, 6 of clubs. I'm sorry, deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs, 6 of spades.
Okay, so flop is deuce, deuce, six, rainbow, right? Deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs, six of spades. You have aces. Do you remember the suits of your aces? Because I'm sure this is going to come into play. I just
Yeah,
have a
I didn't have the
feeling.
ace of spades. I had I think it was ace of diamonds, ace of clubs. Pretty
Okay.
sure.
The reason why this is
Yeah.
important, and this actually goes back to if you guys ever watched this, like the hand with Durr. Do you know? Did you know? Remember the hand of high stakes poker with Durr when like he bluffed like Peter Ace off of like a trip deuces and bluffed Barry Greenstein off of like aces. He had like
I think I do
queen
vaguely.
10
I vaguely
suited,
remember
like he
that.
was using like a blocker, like the board came out like 10 deuce deuce and he just drove hard and like raised a
Yeah.
flop.
Yeah.
Eastgate cold called because he had like deuce four in the big blind. Barry called with aces. He bet the
Yep.
turn into two people and got both of them to fold. It's interesting because they interviewed Barry after that hand. I used to work for Barry, but when you're in these spots with aces, and then especially when you've got a board where the only hand that someone's going to have trips with is with an ace, that's when you look at the suits of
Um,
your aces and how it interacts with the board. Because if some people aren't calling with offsuit aces, or excuse me, offsuit deuces here, then sometimes there are no deuces left that anyone can have, right? Like if they're not playing three deuce,
mhm.
four deuce, five deuce, something like that. But okay, so it's deuce, deuce, six, rainbow, deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs, six of spades. You have the ace of diamonds and the ace of clubs. So in your case, you actually have the worst aces, right? Because someone could have ace deuce of spades and someone could have ace deuce of hearts. If you had the
Yes.
other
For
aces, there
sure.
would be no deuce out there at all. So six six deuce. Okay. So does it get checked
Yeah.
to you?
So it checks to me.
Yep.
I see about 100
100 into like 200,
and
right?
100 into 200. Yes,
Uh
and I expect to get called by even over two overs. All the gut shots.
yeah.
Like I mean, these guys are just calling very wide.
Okay.
And I'm playing a lot of hands, so I expect it called pretty wide.
Like you're gonna get called by a six here, a pocket pair, shit like that, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So you
for
bet
sure.
100. Yeah.
I get 100 the button and the big blind both call. Um, Everyone else folds.
That's interesting because the button calling is probably going to be strong. And then you've got an overcall, right, in the big blind as well. Now, it sounds to me like you're
Yeah,
not this is the type of game where you're still like not overly concerned. You could easily still have the best hand here when it goes call call, but
definitely. I have some history with the big blind. I mean, I'm not sorry, not the big blind, but the button.
yeah.
I play them a little bit already, so that'll come into play.
Okay. So the pot now is
Um,
$400, right?
yes.
Okay.
The turn is the jack of spades.
By the way, how much money do these guys have left? Because the pot's $400. Do you remember?
They both have had about 2K.
Okay, so it was about 2K.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That's not correct. The button had about I believe about 1,400,
Mm-hmm.
and the big blind had about 2K.
All right, so button has started with
Yeah.
1,400, and the big blind had 2K. Okay, so the turn is
Jack of
the
spades.
jack of spades. Okay, yep.
Yes. And I decided to check just for some pot control, and also the button, if he has like any kind of gut shot, 5-4 or anything like that, I expect him to bet pretty aggressively, just because he is a exploitative kind of player.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's gonna take a lot of stabs. So I decided to check, and he checks through actually.
Yeah, I mean this one probably is pretty close. I mean I don't hate a check, but I would as the way that you described this game, I would probably continue to bet. I understand. So you're saying basically you have a
Yeah.
reason because you think the button's gonna bluff at it. But my only thing
Yes.
about that is that almost makes more sense for you to check if you were actually heads up against him. Like the idea that he's going to bluff
Right.
now because you've got this other guy that overcalled too, right? So I feel like the
Yeah.
the bluffing
Exactly.
frequency is going to go down because you've got this third player in the hand. So that's why I might think I would just play this straightforward, like going with your thought. I think I
Okay.
check more heads up. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the other guy wasn't in the hand, but okay, so he gets checked through,
Yeah.
right? All right.
Yeah. So check through, and the river's the eight of spades.
Okay, so deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs, six of spades, jack of spades, eight of spades. You have aces without the ace of spades, though, right? Ace of diamonds, ace of clubs.
Yeah. No ace of spades. Yep.
Okay. So backdoor flush gets there. Okay, so the pot's 400. Yep.
Yeah. Pot's 400, and the big blind leads for 350.
Wow, that's a huge bet, huh?
Yeah.
What's the deal with the big blind?
Yeah.
Like, is he a fish
I
or?
mean, I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about him. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, he's just a young Asian guy, and he seemed kind of jittery, to tell you the truth. I didn't. I thought it was pretty weak when he made the bet.
Hmm.
That was just based on really nothing. He seemed kind of nervous, and that doesn't really necessarily mean that he's strong or weak, but
I
it
mean,
didn't seem
the
very
thing,
strong.
when you look at this spot, like for the big blind, when he leads for 350, like, what
Uh,
value does he have here? Like, what do you think the minimum value hand that he has here is?
Minimum value hand.
Yeah,
Wow,
for this sizing.
probably a flush.
Yeah, right. Or I mean, probably. I would say.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, he might have
it's a
trips, right? He might have trips
yeah,
because there's a backdoor
exactly.
flush draw. But I don't think that there's
Yeah,
a value hand that he's betting here that's like worse than aces, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
there's a
Yeah,
big, there's a
that's true.
yeah, it's a big bet. I mean, plus he just
I guess
called.
I guess it was kind of like just a sense so that he was weak. I don't know why. Just I picked up on it pretty fast, and
Well, listen, I
I just
mean, if
pulled.
you, I'm not saying I'm gonna fold, but I'm just saying
Yeah,
that you're not gonna call here and be shown a worse value hand. And I think you agree with me, right?
exactly. It's a
Yeah.
value for sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he leads. So in that case, if he's polarized, right? What do you do?
Uh-huh.
What do you do if he's polarized? What would be the worst
If
play to
he's
make here?
polarized,
Yeah.
the worst play would be to raise.
Right. Right. That's what I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
exactly.
If a guy's
Yeah,
polarized and you want to continue, then you just call, right? Like you
for
can't raise.
sure.
There's no point.
Definitely.
So
And I mean, I probably made a mistake here, and I just called pretty fast.
yeah.
I
Well,
should have thought about it
what's
a
the
little bit
mistake?
more.
Well, I mean,
I just feel like I should have thought because I did have a player behind me,
yeah.
and I just feel like I should have thought about it a bit more.
Uh huh. So
But
big blind leads 350. You call. Okay.
I just almost snap call, but I just throw a chip in. I'm like, I just call,
Yeah.
and now the button shoves.
Wow.
He says all in.
For how so button shoves all in for like what 1400 total or 1300 total,
Yeah,
right? So like another 1,000,
exactly.
something like that.
It was 9 and some change. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was about 1,000 more.
So what does the guy in the big blind do?
He just snap folds almost.
Wow.
Yeah, he snapped. Yeah.
So
He
the big
just folds
blind
right
so the
away.
big blind probably had like 4-5 or 3-4 or some shit like that, right? I mean that's
Exactly.
he
Yeah,
must
he overgot the.
he must
Yeah.
have like a busted straight draw. Um
Yeah.
I mean you got to just like you got to sometimes you got to fold here. You know what I mean? I mean
Yeah,
I mean I
that
understand
seems right.
I understand that it's possible that somebody could be bluffing you, and obviously the other guy was bluffing. But the thing is that like the other guy, I'm talking about the guy in the big blind, but this is just such a low frequency raise spot here. The backdoor flush has come in, which is certainly viable. I mean, yeah, according to you, he can't really have 6x of spades, but
Mm-hmm.
he could have eights. He could have flopped it. Uh, it's just so rare for a guy because he's raising. Now he might be leveraging you because he thinks you have an overpair only. But what about the guy in the big
Exactly.
blind? He's not going to just choose to like make a raise here because the guy in the big blind can have a hand, right? Like if the guy in the button has a bluff, he's going to worry about the guy in the big blind, right? I mean,
That's true.
when it gets back
Yeah.
around to you, I mean, 350, you make the call, so the pot is 11, 14. It's probably like 2,400, like 1,000-ish for you to call, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's about 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think I would fold, man. I feel like it's at a
Yeah.
very underbluffed spot here. Even though he's representing a very thin value range, I feel like it's a very underbluffed um,
I
spot.
thought so too, but
Yeah,
I also thought it was a good move. But
yeah.
um, I decided to fold.
Hmm.
Thinking back on it now, I would have called.
Really?
Obviously, knowing a bit more additional information about this guy. Um,
Did he
the guy
show?
I thought the guy
So
next
you
to me,
folded and he showed a bluff or something, or what?
he didn't do anything. Yeah, he didn't show.
Oh, so
I
you don't
still
know?
don't know.
Oh, okay.
I still don't know. No, I still don't know what he had
But you feel like you
in
want
the
to.
end.
But you feel like you want to call now?
I would have called. Yeah, now looking back on it, I would have called.
I mean, the one thing I just want to, I do want to say though, and we'll leave the call though, is that I think a lot of people, they will confuse. I thought you were going to tell me that you folded and you should like a bluff, but you don't know, right? So a lot of people confuse the spot though with players and tendencies, right? Like you think now, oh, now I see him, he's a maniac. I definitely would have called, but like, but even if a guy's a maniac, though, look at the situation. Like, like he is raising all in against a guy that is basically polarized in his sizing from the big blind. You call in the middle. Like, this is, it's a very rare situation. It's an entirely different case than looking at a guy and being like, oh, he's a maniac. Like he can't bluff two people here. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I feel like he kind of sensed the same thing I did with the big blind, that he was just, trying to make a move. And I feel like he got that sense as well. And he put me exclusively on like somewhat like an overpair. And I kind of under-rep my hand at the moment, like, because I checked the turn,
Yeah.
So I could have like pocket eights, pocket sevens, something like that. I'm sorry, not pocket eights, like pocket sevens, pocket nines that I'll also call. But I don't know, man. It's just it's kind of 60-40 for me. But I would have called knowing the information I know now.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. So we got, let's see here. We got 2 people here on the line. We've done 2, and then we have a floater call. But these calls have actually been pretty long. So I do have a call from, or a hand from somebody that emailed in that actually can't be on the call-in show. And let's see if we get to that. I might just read it out loud. And put it up here in the notes, but let's see how far we're going to go to. All right, 612. Oh, this is a non-poker call, and then we're going to go to an international call. This is this Tim?
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going, Tim?
Hey, Bart. Yeah, so in your last podcast, you were talking about that you've always rented in California. And then, so what are some of the pros and cons between renting and buying, and why have you always rented when you have the money to buy? You're losing out on all the equity.
Right. So you had emailed me. So I went on this, I try, I feel very strongly about this, right? So this might be we might put this into a video that's obviously not a hand, right? Renting versus buying. I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can be, because it's a decision that's obviously has a lot of different variables on it. You know what I'm saying? Like for a lot of people, buying is better. But for a lot of people, renting is better. And what I was saying on my podcast, if you subscribe to Crush Light Poker, is that, I mean, I do have a fair amount of assets, and most of my assets are invested. I mean, I don't let money just sit around. And I also own, too, but I rent it out. In the Boston area, I own a condo. But my wife and I, we don't really know what we're doing. I mean, I just signed a 4-month lease here in Summerlin, right? Like, I have no idea where we're going to end up. I sort of want to stay mobile. We don't really like to doing maintenance. I have enough of a headache in my life with work stuff, and I'm so busy with work. I don't want to take on the extra responsibility of basically owning a home and what goes into that with the maintenance, finding the right home, all that type of stuff. And so renting is, for some people, a far superior choice than buying. And what I was trying to basically get across in my other podcast was that, and it's usually with older people, they sort of have this old-fashioned notion that if you make it, you own. And if somebody doesn't own and they rent, they don't have their shit together. Now, that might have been the case years ago. It certainly is not now. Because when you look at it, real estate actually lags behind. Like if you were to put your money like into an S&P 500 like index fund traditionally over the years. So when you take out the fact that you don't have the headache, you can make more money by actually investing in the market or doing other investments where you don't have that money to invest because you had to put it down on like as a down payment. You can certainly actually end up far ahead by renting your entire life. Now you do get tax benefits. Obviously, the interest from your mortgage is tax deductible up to a certain level, sometimes property taxes. are deductible. But Tim, I remember you had emailed in about a condo, right? And the issue with a condo is that you're going to have an HOA fee as well, which is basically almost like a rent when you own. And that's not tax deductible at all. But you're saying, I think there's a little bit of confusion about like, oh, you're building equity up like in this place. Yes, you're building equity up in this place, but if you don't live at a place for say like 5 to 10 years, even if the place has gone up by 10, 20%, you can end up behind in the closing costs, in the taxes, in the mortgage, and how about just the headache in itself? So for me, renting is definitely a superior choice. You also see people who are high income. I was reading this article about how there are a lot of high income people that are actually renting quite a bit now, more so than ever before. And I think it's a little bit of a farce, like the American dream of like home ownership. For some people, it's really good, Tim, because they don't know how to save. And buying is forced savings, meaning that if they don't buy, they're going to waste that money or they're not going to have it working for them. And in that case, certainly. I mean, for people that aren't all that financially savvy or financially responsible, buying is a really good choice because they're forced to build equity. But if you sort of know how to game the system, play the game, invest your money, you can certainly end up, I think, far ahead by not buying your primary residence ever. I mean, obviously, if you know you're going to stay someplace, like you're going to raise a family, you're not going to stay there for like 20 years, it certainly might make sense to buy. The other advantage too with buying is that you obviously don't have to worry about getting kicked out of your place every year if you have like a yearly lease. And in some areas, like where I grew up, like around the Boston area, you have to buy to be able to get a nice place. Like you can't rent like a nice house. There aren't nice houses to be rented, right? So it's sort of inventory as well. Geographic location by inventory. That's certainly not the case like in LA or in Vegas. You can rent plenty of really, really nice houses. You had also said, Tim, about like sort of passing down something to your heirs, right? Like if you buy a place, like if you don't own a place, you can't really pass something down to them, right? Well, what about assets? Like what about money that you could pass down to them? I mean, would you rather pass down a house or would you rather pass down more money than the house is worth?
Yeah, but don't they have a big income tax on your what's it called? After you pass away.
Well, I mean, there's a huge exemption for. You mean talking about estate tax? I think there's a $10 million exemption for estate tax, but it's the same thing. You don't get. I could hand. Let's say that there was only a $1 million exemption for estate tax, right? And I had $2 million in cash. And I died and it went to one of my kids, right? And they got taxed on $1 million of that. If I had a house that was worth $2 million, it would be the same thing. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like there's no tax advantage from what I understand. But again, it's just like a whole thing of the idea that like renting is for suckers, renting is for financially irresponsible people. It's really not, and it's actually a superior choice for a lot of people. And if you talk to people that have sort of bought houses, especially those that had to exit, like for whatever reason they got divorced or they had to move, they will tell you that it was not the best choice for the most part to buy. So, like I said, it's very, very sort of, I would say specific. I would say sort of like, person specific. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Does that answer your question? Do you have anything else?
No, that makes sense. But I mean, like, there's also part like I know a lot of people that have lived in California, bought a house like 15 years ago, like when you were there, and selling now, and like it's like 10x, right? Like it's some ridiculous number just in California specifically because the market's so ridiculous,
Well, yeah, I mean, but you're just playing the real estate market basically though too. Like you can also invest in money. You could invest that money in real estate by not buying where you live though. There are other ways to invest in real estate. Like I'm invested in real estate as well. You just have to look at all the variables basically. Now somebody did bring up a point here about being leveraged with a house, and while that is actually true that when you take a mortgage out and you only have to put like 20% down, say you buy a house for like $500,000, right? And you only have to you put 100,000 down. You know, if the house goes up by like 2x to $1 million and you sell it, you know, you've made basically $500,000, right? But you only put up 100. So the house went up from 500 to $1 million, right? But your investment went up from 100,000 to 500,000, right? You made 5x. So yes, there's some leveraging there too. But thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to international caller here. This is Mink. Is that right? Mink?
It's Mike.
Oh, Mike. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Are you American?
Just spelled strange. No, from England.
So are you actually, I see you're calling in from China. Are you actually in Kunming right now?
Yeah, I'm in China now.
I'm familiar. Kunming is a city in the south. I've been to China like 20 times, but it's like kind of tropical, isn't it? Isn't it kind of a warm destination?
It's pretty warm, yeah. It's known for being a good temperature throughout the year.
Cool.
Not quite tropical, but nice and warm.
Not quite tropical. Okay, cool. You got a hand for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is back in England.
Okay.
It's a £1 game in Leeds, in the north of England.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Leeds United. Right.
Leeds, they have a football team.
Yeah.
So this is a 9-handed table on a Saturday night.
Uh-huh.
I've got just under £300 in front of me.
Okay.
It's a very loose game.
Mm-hmm.
Has a lot of foldophobic players here. They just want to call with any hand, pretty much, which is great. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the button in seat 2. It starts with seat 7, early middle position, very loose aggressive. He open raises to £11.
Okay.
In this 1-1 game.
Yep.
Which is a bit more than average, but not much more.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then we get a call from seat 8, call from seat 1, and then I'm on the button with Jack of clubs, 9 of clubs.
Okay.
So I call, and then seat 3 to my immediate left in the small blind. He's a loose guy who I want to be getting into hands with. He calls as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the pot is £57.
All right, let me stop you right
there.
Let me stop you right there too. Just about pre-flop. By the way, someone asking about was £1, 25 cents? No, the pound is worth more than a dollar, dummy. It's like $1.40. So here, so you got MP to 11, call. You're on the button with Jack 9 of clubs. This is where I talk about the large sizing live, where you can't really look at a stack size and be like, oh, I'm 300 big blinds here, right? Because if standard opens to 10, in essence, it's almost like a 1-3 game, right? So it's really, you're really like sort of like 100 blinds. But, you know, the theory here is that when this guy raises and it goes call, there is dead money. And you can play a lot of hands here as a squeeze because of the overlay too. Jack 9 of clubs might be sort of in the call range. The way that things flop well, the direct suited connectors have more value. But like if you had like Jack 10 of clubs, I could definitely see this as a squeeze. You certainly can have some overcalls here. So I'm just pointing that out, right? That this could be a hand that could be squeezed. It is at this level, it gets a little dicey because you're sort of very shallow and you don't really know what exactly to do on certain boards. So you're not gaining that much. And if you don't feel comfortable playing like these bloated 3-bet pots, maybe not with a pure value hand, I think that it's fine to like stick this into a call range. So the small blind calls and 1, 2, 3, 4 ways, right? Pot is 57. Okay.
I've got the razor and 4 callers, including myself, 5-handed.
5-handed. Okay. So 5-handed.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the flop is Queen of clubs, 4 of clubs, 9 of hearts.
Let me just, I had forgotten to thank you guys in the chat. All right. So it's Queen of clubs, 4 of clubs, 9 of hearts.
Yeah.
Okay. So you flop middle pair and a flush draw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yep.
So small blind checks, and then seat 7 bets £30. So about half pot.
Okay. So check. Pre-flop razor, right?
Yeah.
30. About half the size of the pot. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Seat 8 folds, seat 1 folds, and then comes to me and I call.
All right. So guy C bets 30, goes fold. You're closing the action. Hero.
There's a small blind behind.
Right. But you're on the button. Hero calls on button. And then what did the small blind do?
He called as well.
Okay, so this is another spot where I feel like if this went bet call, like say for example, like the pre-flop raiser bet 30, which he did, right? And then somebody called in between.
Yeah.
I would be doing a fair amount of raising here, almost as a squeeze. You're leveraging people who can't really call with a queen. You want to sometimes get a higher flush draw out of there. This is if it went bet call. So if MP had bet 30 and it went call, I'd be raising here quite a bit. When your head's up, I mean, I know the small blind's left to act to your left, and you're closing basically action on the button. I don't mind a call here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you've considered raising, but you know, it's just sort of the difference between multi-way and heads up. So you make the call, and the small blind calls. So now the pot's like 147, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the turn is the 10 of diamonds.
10 of
That
diamonds.
gives me an open-ended straight draw as well as my flush draw.
Right. Jack 9 of clubs. So you got open-ended straight draw, flush draw, and you have a pair of nines, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a lot.
Yeah.
Seat 3 now, the small blind, he leads out for £30.
Wow, that's weird. 30 into
Yes.
30 into 147, right? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy's quite an unusual player. Very loose, but if he hits something, then he bets. If he hits something big, he bets big. If he hits something small, he bets small, which is it's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. This concerns me, though, that, like, all of a sudden he's just leading on this card. Like, I doubt that this is just, like, you know, a queen or something like that. So he leads for 30, okay.
Yeah. Then seat 7,
Yep.
thinks for not very long, and then just shoves all in for £400, which is about 250 effective.
So lead for 30 into 147, right? So, and now this guy, so that's 177. And then this guy now shoves for like basically what is 250. So that's like 420. So it's like 425, 250 for you to call, but then you have the guy behind you too, right? The small blind.
Yeah. Yeah. Both myself and the small blind have about 250.
Yeah, 450, 250 for you to call, and then if the small blind comes in, it's actually like 700, 250 for you to call because I'm including the small blind. The problem here is that I think you're sharing a lot. Like, I think a lot of people are going to have, or one of these guys is going to have like a jack at least here too with you. So, like, yeah, obviously, like if both guys had like a set, you could call this easily, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
You know, you could call this easily with your flush draw. Or if somebody had a set and somebody had two pair, I'm just concerned that somebody has. I mean, listen, it's a 1-1 game, so the guy who's MP1 could very well just have like aces or something, right? Or like kings and think he's just going to go with it, right? Because against a small lead. And the other guy could have like two pair or something like that. But I don't think your draw is good enough here to really continue on, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd be very, very weary here. And then you also look at the way that sort of the board interacts with your cards as well. You might have less outs because someone's going to have king something here, right? And you're open-ended, right?
Yep.
Someone also can have a higher club draw here too. So
it's
I'm a little dicey here. I don't think I make this call with this guy next to act. You know, let's say the guy folded out a turn, right? The small blind folded out a turn. He bet, and like this guy moved all in, and he folded out a turn, so the action's on you. So the pot's like, you know, it's 250 for you to call, right? And the pot would be like, well, we just said it was 170, 200. It would be like 450, right? The pot would be 450, 250 for you to call. Even then, you know, you're getting almost 2-1, but even then, you know, you're getting the right price against specifically like red aces, right? You've got an open-end straight draw, flush draw, and a pair. You got a shit ton of outs against like red aces, right? Like 20 outs. So you get the right price, but you got to put the guy in a range. And the way that the board interacts with some of the hands that he sort of raises here, I don't like it. So I probably don't make this call heads up. And I probably don't make this call with the guy behind me here either. What ended up happening?
Well, I would be more keen to fold if it was heads up, but with the guy behind me,
you thought you were getting a better price, basically. You thought he was going to call.
because he didn't fold. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought about it for quite a while because I was just trying to work out what kind of equity I've got in this situation, which is really difficult. Because, like you said, if someone's got the higher flush draw,
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of trouble. If someone's already got the straight, I'm in
Right.
a lot of trouble.
Right. Exactly.
So I could have anywhere between 0 and 39% equity.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't
I
know
mean,
where I am in that range.
you could have 0% equity here if somebody had a higher flush draw and you're up against like a king jack, right? Like you'd be
Yeah,
dead.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of the issue. I mean, but it sounds to me like you're saying that you don't think the small blind really has king jack because he would lead larger. So yeah, there's definitely
Yes.
other assumptions that are going on here.
Yeah, quite a lot.
You ended up calling or what?
I did, yes.
Uh-huh.
I thought the original Razor had just a draw, but then again, if it's a flush draw, I'm in trouble.
Uh-huh.
And the small blind just had something, but not much. So I did end up calling, and then they showed, and seat 3, the original Razor, had pocket jacks,
Okay.
so just an open-ended straight draw.
Yep.
And the small blind had king queen, the top pair.
And the small blind called off.
Yes, oh, yes, he did.
Wow. So MP1 has Jack Jack, and small blind has King Queen, right?
Yeah,
King Queen
offsuit, yeah.
offsuit.
Yeah.
I mean, good. It's good that your flush draw is live, right? But this is the issue. This is the issue though with the open ended with the Jack, and also too the fact that someone's got a king in their hand here too, which I sort of suspected a little bit as well, is that you're chopping with the straight outs, right? Like if you hit your straight out, you're chopping, and then one of the kings is dead. Now, what's interesting here is you could actually catch a 9, and that would be good for the win here too, and a flush. But, yeah, that's sort of what I'm concerned. Interesting play from the MP1.
Yeah.
With Jack Jack. I mean, it's sort of a blocker type of semi-bluff kind of play. The issue that I would have though is that I don't know if the small blind is just going to suddenly like check call with like a queen and then like lead out for 30 on the turn. So if I was your MP1 here with Jack Jack, I think I'd probably just call a lot because I don't know how much fold equity I'm going to have against the small blind. So it's interesting. So what did you win the hand or what? What ended up happening?
Oh, so the river came out 3 of clubs. So I hit my flush and got the lucky win.
Nice. River's at 3 of clubs. Cool. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one. Let me ask you a question about the rake and stuff over there. Like, how does it work in Leeds, and what size of games do they have and stuff too?
So in Leeds, it's usually only 1-1 games, £1 games, but there's often 2 or 3 games, maybe 4 on a Saturday night, and then a bit of PLO as well.
Yeah.
The rake is 5%, capped at £5.
Okay.
And then a couple of other smaller rakes for some promos, by another £1 probably.
Uh-huh. So, but it is a rake up to 5, basically up to a certain amount, right?
Yeah. Okay, so any pot over £100 still gets a £5 rake max.
Well, that's good that it's capped. And what's the largest size up there for a game?
In Leeds, there's just usually £1, £1. I don't think I've seen a £1, £2 game there, but I think they get them every now and again.
And you can buy in for whatever you want, or what? Or just
uncapped. Yeah. Oh. So there are some serious players who sit down for £600, £700, £800.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. So we're going to do something a little bit different here to wrap the show up. I am going to read off a hand that was submitted by our buddy Read My Lips, Chris Sigmund in the Portland, Oregon area. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's see if this is going to work out here so that you guys can all see it. I am going to copy and paste what he wrote to me here. Oh, this might not work because it's too much. Let's see. I don't know if this is going to work here or not, or how much you guys can see, but we'll read through the hand and then I'll just sort of edit it as we go along. But hopefully you guys can see this, and then Anita will use this for a hand if it goes well here too. So this is 7-handed, 5-10, no limit hold'em, 2,300 effective. Drunk, under the gun, loose player, limps for $10 with an 8K stack. Folds to a good pro who raises to 50 from the cutoff. He knows the under the gun is drunk, and the hero thinks that he will be isolating with a wide value range, pairs, Broadway cards, Ace high hand suited connectors. Loose passive fish calls on the button. Hero in the small blind with 10-10. Chris says, old me would flat here, not wanting to blow up the pot out of position, but knowing what to do if I get 4-bet, etc. But the new me, studying CLP and watching a bunch of Doug Polk hand reviews, thinks that 10-10 is way ahead of the cutoff's ISOing range. Plus, there's dead money out there from the flat call. So I 3-bet to 250. Big blind folds, drunk UTG folds, good pro in the cutoff calls, and now the other guy folds. So the pot is 570. So we're the hero. Drunk guy limps, cutoff 50 call. We squeeze to 250 with 10-10. And everybody folds except for basically the pro. So I'm going to take off all this other stuff, and I'm just going to write out here for you viewers. 10-10 in the small blind. UTG limp. Cutoff 50 call. Hero 3 balls to 250 with 10-10. Everyone folds except the cutoff. And we're heads up. Out of position. Flop comes out. So we got 10-10. Flop comes out 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts. By the way, Chris says, what do I think about preflop? I think preflop is fine, obviously. I mean, I might make it a little bit larger. I might make it the 3-bet a little bit larger because it's a 50 call. Like if you went 4 times, he's going 4 times plus the dead money, 250. He's making 5x. I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think it's a big deal. So pre-flop, yes, I totally agree, especially with what you're saying. Flop comes out 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts. So and the pot size is probably like 550-ish, something like that. So we'll call it 560. 993, and Chris bets 200 with pocket tens on 993 into 560. And the villain calls in this particular spot. So, he chooses like a 35 to 40% type of sizing. I mean, I think that's fine. One of the things that is interesting here is that like a hand like tens will need more protection than like a hand like kings or aces here, right? So when you go back and you do the work on like what hands are bet, you'll actually see the lower pairs bet here more than some of the higher pairs because they don't need as much protection. So Chris bets 200. Villain calls. Pot is 970. Don't have a big problem with it here for those reasons, like I said. Turn is the 5 of clubs. And here it's 9 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, turns the 5 of clubs. Hero bets 675. Now this is kind of interesting here because after you bet 200 in the 3-bet pot and now the pot is like 970. Betting like 2/3 here is a little strange to me. I think it's a little bit large because unless you think ace highs are going to call you or like 6s, 7s, 8s, something like that, you don't want to put yourself in a situation, right, where you're way ahead, way behind. And I think that this 2/3 sizing starts to get a little bit too thin. Now, obviously, if you had a hand like aces, you could do something like that. But this guy's going to have like some overpairs too that aren't necessarily, gonna 4-bet off. I mean, yes, I understand that you think that he's ISOing because it's a drunk guy. I mean, I get that, but I think that the sizing here is a little bit large when Chris decides to bet basically 675. So I would probably continue to do some small betting here, possibly check. I don't think checking is, that bad here either. But Chris does bet 675 and the villain calls. So the pot now is 2320. And this is where I feel like you think you've run out of some value, I want to say. Pot is 2320. Again, Chris has 10-10. And he also says here in the email, when villain calls, I think he has slow played monsters. Any 9 mostly, nut flush draws, Broadway flush draws, suited connectors like 8-7, 7-6 of hearts, 6-5 of hearts, which are front door flush draws. He says, is this an accurate range for the villain? Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think that he's not, because nobody really called in between after you 3-bet, I still think he's going to have jacks, queens. He might even have some kings here. Certainly, right, flush draws on the flop. You bet so large on the turn that a lot of the ace high hands that have no draw are just going to piece off here. So it is sort of left with nines, a fair amount of overpairs, and flush draws. I mean, I think that's relatively accurate. I don't know if sixes and eights here continues on to the sizing on the turn. It's possible. So it's kind of interesting. So anyways, the river comes out the ace of clubs. So it is 9935 ace. Again, Chris has got 10-10. And obviously, I mean, again, I think that Chris has run out of value when he bets this sizing on the turn, where the river was probably going to be a check. And, there's really isn't a whole lot to be said here at the end. He says in the email, after throwing up in my mouth, I take a long time and I check. He takes a few seconds and checks behind. My hand is good and he doesn't show. Chris says, should Villain be using that as a bluff card? Does it look like from Villain's perspective that I'm checking the river to check call? If I'm in Villain spot, should I be using that ace as a bluff card to get small blind off of pocket pairs that don't contain an ace? He says, I was really surprised Villain didn't bet this card on the river, either for thin value with the nut flush draw hands or as a bluff to get me off of pocket pairs. So, I mean, obviously it depends on what the Villain arrives with here, right? I mean, Hero's going to check for sure, right? So if the Villain has sixes, sevens, eights, something like that, should he bluff here? Does he have enough showdown value? He probably doesn't. You're going to run into an ace some of the time here as well. Some of your ace highs are bet across two streets as a bluff. You probably would go for some value here, though, too. And then if he just ends up with nothing, like, say, for example, he had 6-7 hearts, is he supposed to bluff that? Just because you have zero showdown value does not mean that you always get to bluff, especially when you're blocking, your opponent from having the draws. And it really does look like, with a half pot size bet left, that you would be check calling here. The interesting thing here is if I was Chris and I had tens and I checked and my opponent shoved, it would be kind of dicey because of the fact I would sort of need to know the player, and if he's good enough to bet the nut flush draw here on the river, like say, for example, he has, ace 4 of hearts, ace 10 of hearts, some sort of hand that had nut hearts in it, right? If he's good enough to take that hand for value at the end when checked to, and by the way, here too, I might make this into a play hand because this is interesting. You guys know those play hands like on Instagram that I do. If he's good enough to bet ace X of hearts here at the end, then we can't call the river. So a lot of people in live poker, they're not good enough to hand read here, and they are polarized, meaning that if he bets the river all in, he's representing a 9+ or a busted flush draw, right? He's polarized. So, if Chris had tens, maybe he calls, maybe he doesn't call. But if the opponent also is good enough to put the ace X of hearts into his range, into his betting here at the end on the river, then then you're really fucked. I don't think you can call. With 10. So I think it's a little bit player dependent in that particular sense. But basically, that's what I would say. So I went check, and Chris won. If I was his opponent, would I bluff? I don't think so. I don't think that I'm going to get a whole lot of folds given this stack. I just think you're going to have, the guy's going to be getting 3-1, right? If the guy bets 1,100, it's half the size of the pot, so he's going to be getting 3-1. So, which actually makes me actually want to overfold more in Chris's spot. If I'm the hero and I check and the guy bets all in, I almost want to fold more, but usually that bluff doesn't get through, so I don't think that I would necessarily bluff in that guy's spot. But anyways, Chris, thank you. Hopefully we can, maybe that's going to be good enough for a call in hand here as well. Again, if you guys want to be on the show, thanks for being in the chat and keeping it real. But if you want to be on the show, just email me in ahead of time, bart@crushlivepoker.com. Or if you're a CLP subscriber, of course, you can hit me up on Discord, and I will give priority to CLP subscribers. But we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.